Hello, I'm a new mother in my 30s with a child. Actually, because I had a really hard time before I got married. I'd almost given up on getting married halfway through. However, there's something very strange about a relationship. Like pretty trusted stories. Before marriage, even though it was a very long and difficult time for me, as hard as it was, I'm having very happy days now. Since I was born, my parents have not been around me. My dad abandoned my mom who is pregnant with me, and my mom still worked hard with determination to make a life for herself and for her unborn baby. But because she overexerted herself, I was born earlier, and my mom passed away while giving birth to me. My maternal grandma didn't even know of her daughter's pregnancy, and she suddenly had to take care of me really out of the blue. I heard that from my grandma. Seeing me was the hardest thing she had to do, and she struggled because she couldn't be kind to me, an innocent baby, nor could she abandon me. When I heard that from a neighbor, I was shocked since I was too young, but still, I was able to understand my grandma. To my grandma, if it weren't for me, her daughter would not have died in vain like that so tragically. However, because my grandma was a kind person who couldn't turn away from her bloodline and ignore her heart, she eventually embraced me. And even though she didn't have much, she tried to give everything she had for her granddaughter and devoted in raising me with love. As a result, even though in a rural school, I always got first place in the whole school. I grew up watching my grandma suffer, so I set the goal of becoming a medical doctor early on. To achieve that goal, I studied hard day and night. My grandma must have felt sorry for me for focusing only on my studies. Studying that hard is not needed. You should do it in moderation. She tried to stop me, but I felt if I earned good money and became a good doctor, of course I would be able to cure all of my grandmother's minor illnesses and be able to make her life comfortable for the rest of her life. So I really tried to save time by reducing the time of eating and sleeping to study more. Thus, people around me told my grandma, "Your granddaughter is so dead set, isn't she?" And to help me, thus I got an almost perfect score in my SAT exams. Eventually, I was able to enter Harvard University and medical school on a full scholarship. Not only my grandma, but everyone around me said I knew it from the start when she studied that our Stella would make it. Everyone was happy for me. I felt proud that I was one step closer toward my dream, but there was one thing that bothered me. "Grandma, can't you just live in Cambridge with me? You have a bad back and knees. What if you get hurt when you're alone?" What should I do? Just go to the hospital in town. I've lived here all my life in the countryside, so in the city, I'll be choking and wouldn't live. When I think I have to let you live alone in that noisy and polluted air joint, I worry about how you could live in a dump like there. Everyone was fine there. That's why they're all trying to live there. You wait and see. Your granddaughter will soon become a doctor and I'll make you very happy and have you in luxury. It's okay. Take good care of your body. Even if you don't have a grandma, go to school diligently. Listen carefully to what the teacher says. And men especially, you have to be careful. If there's something wrong, call me right away. Oh my, how am I supposed to part with my dear little one? My grandma said that it was hard for her to part from me for a long time, and she was worried about me. She kept warning me and managed to get on the express bus to go back to her hometown. My grandmama and I were all alone without each other, so all I thought was bringing her back as soon as I became successful. Even in college, I never thought about having a social life and was just studying very hard. Maybe that's why I didn't have a single close friend while I was in college. Then, I noticed a returning medical student who was in my class. We knew of each other but didn't say anything. Before we knew it, when we ran into each other in the classroom, we became close enough to greet each other lightly. Now that I think about it, I think he and I were shy and introverted, so we never thought about approaching each other. But was it fate? He and I, who just passed each other like that, accidentally met again while studying at the library before the final exams. Since we both studied all night, I got a cup of coffee from the vending machine in the hallway to take a break. I had an unexpected conversation with that person. "Hello. Excuse me. If you have a quarter, could you lend me one? I'll definitely pay you back." He wanted to drink coffee, but he didn't have a quarter, so he asked me to borrow a coin. I gladly lent him a coin. Starting with that, he and I started talking, and sometimes we ate lunch together on campus. I was able to build a close friendship with him. My grandma told me to watch out for men whenever she spoke with me on the phone, but this person was more thoughtful and warm-hearted the more I got to know him. He later became my only husband. However, it wasn't that the two of us started dating immediately after that day. It took 5 years for our relationship to start. Before that, each of us had to practice in the hospital and prepare for the licensing exam, as I ran frantically for the goal of being a doctor. I couldn't even confess my feelings properly, and I graduated. Finally, I got my doctor's license and officially started working at the hospital, action at the recommendation of a senior in the same hospital. I went to volunteer medical services for the first time, and there, I saw my husband again. I was so happy to see him again. The two of us, who couldn't say a word to each other because we were shy, burst into talking so much at the same time. We talked so much that I wondered if we were ever shy people. We naturally became lovers. In the midst of the busy doctor's life, love was like honey. I had to keep it a secret from my grandma and meet my husband, but my caring husband took good care of me, who lived alone away from home, and I gradually fell in love with him. I dated my husband for about 3 years, and my husband told me he couldn't hold off any longer and proposed to me. I was happy, but at that moment, I was hesitant to answer. It was because of my grandma in the countryside. At that moment when my husband proposed, I was worried that my grandma had to continue to live alone in the countryside when I get married. Then, at my reaction, my husband became somewhat uneasy. He couldn't wait for an answer, so he opened his mouth first. Why? A problem? That is. I told my husband how he felt about my grandma. By dating, I'd already told him how I grew up and studied. Since I told my husband about everything, he listened to my concerns as if they were his. And when I finished talking, my husband didn't hesitate and smiled as he said, "Stella, do you think I proposed without even thinking about it? If only your grandma says yes. I think it's good for the 3 of us to live together." Really? Is it really okay? Yes, I'm very grateful to your grandma. I also want your grandma to live comfortably. Let's go say hi to your grandma this weekend. You still haven't talked about us, have you? Stella, to be honest, it was true that I didn't even talk about John up until then. I was looking for the opportunity to tell my grandma, but the trauma of my mother being betrayed by my father and passing away in vain was stronger than expected. So, while my grandmother wished that I meet a good partner and have a happy marriage, she said she didn't know whom to trust, and she was always ambivalent. However, my husband was a good person to whomever he met. I felt confident that once my grandma met him personally, she would be relieved. So the evening after receiving my husband's proposal, I called my grandma and confessed to her, right when wet. "You've been dating for so long without my knowledge. But that's not even enough, and you were coming to get my permission to marry. Yes, you kept telling me to watch out for men, so I couldn't say. But the person I am seeing is a really nice person, so meet him and give me your approval to get married. You have to give me the permission so that I could get married." Oh my lord, do you need permission from this old grandma when you have already done everything without my knowledge? Of course. I am your baby, and when you tell me not to do, I never do it. So have you been cheating on your grandma for so long? Still, if you had told me earlier, I would have gone up to see him. Anyway, if you are so fond of him like that much, why don't you bring him? But this grandma won't be so easy. My grandma was very shocked at first because of my confession, but she did not make me feel uncomfortable. She joked and asked me to bring my husband, and I introduced my husband to her that weekend. Even though she warned that she wasn't going to be easy on him, she ran out barefooted and held our hand and greeted us first warmly. "Welcome. Was it tiring coming from so far?" Thanks to that, my husband, who was very nervous and worried, finally smiled brightly, and we got my grandma's permission to get married. The real worries and problems followed after that. After my grandma's permission, I was to go to my husband's house to meet with his parents. My husband had told me before that his parents were just ordinary office workers, but somehow he looked restless, looking serious. "What's wrong? Do you feel uncomfortable?" "No, but before you go to see my parents, I have something to say. Actually, my parents are college professors and not ordinary office workers, both of them." "Wait, but why did you lie?" "At first, I did it because I thought it would be burdensome. Seeing other relatives and my older cousins, if there was a gap between the family's finances or background, there were many cases where they broke up because it was burdensome. And I didn't want to break up with you, so I kept putting it off, and now I'm talking about it frankly. I'd be lying if I wasn't surprised, but I could understand my husband. It was because I loved my husband that much. However, the problem was not that my husband's parents were professors. Rather, it was because of the wealth of my husband's family that I had never known until then. As it turned out, everyone in my husband's family graduated from Harvard University and had jobs like doctors, prosecutors, and lawyers. I wondered if they would approve this marriage after they learn about my family background. I was worried. In hindsight, except for my job as a doctor, I was like an orphan with only my old grandmother in my family. I never thought not having parents is a flaw until then. I didn't say much to my husband, but honestly, I didn't feel very confident, and his family background was a burden to me. However, my worries disappeared as soon as I met my future parents-in-law. Their warm and kind welcome made me feel so relieved. Welcome. How I missed you. My son never said that he was dating any girl, so I was very worried inside. Listen, I heard that you're a doctor. I didn't insist on my daughter-in-law being a doctor. After all, a daughter-in-law who fits well into our family is coming in, and when I go to school these days, I feel very proud. You pretended not to be so particular, but actually you are. As for me, I am okay with any girl that our son brings that he likes. You must be hungry, right? I'm not really good at cooking, but I paid a lot of attention, so I hope you will enjoy it. My husband's family with a warm atmosphere was so harmonious that I felt jealous. I felt so sorry for my grandma, but I thought how nice it would be if I lived in a house like this as a family. I thought that I would like to marry my husband as soon as possible. It was then my mother-in-law asked, "What kind of family did our prospective daughter-in-law grow up in? What are your parents doing?" Vision's paper. I don't have parents. My dad hasn't been with me before I was born. My mother died giving birth to me, so I was raised by my grandmother. I calmly answered the question, which I thought they would ask one of these days. After I finished speaking, not only did they look flustered, but soon they smiled gently again. Then his mother said, "I didn't know that about you. I'm sorry if my question upset you." No, of course I had to tell you. Your grandma must have suffered a lot. She even supported you to study to become a doctor by yourself. Yes, my grandmother suffered a lot for me. I must repay her in the future. My mother-in-law heard my story and nodded her head. So with such a mother-in-law, I thought I would respect her and we could even live together. When we get married, they will be my parents and I vowed that I would be good to them. 2 days later, I came to realize that my thoughts at the time were absurd, and I had my own misunderstanding about the whole thing. It had been a week since I went to my husband's house, and even though it was 15 days after, my husband didn't say anything more about his parents' opinion of me. I was curious about the reaction of his parents when I was not there. Do your parents like me as their daughter-in-law? Huh? No, of course. You saw it then. Both of them liked you. It was called intuition. The day I went to say hello to my parents-in-law, I had a very good feeling. But seeing my husband's reaction, it was kind of strange, I thought. But there were things I saw, heard, and did, so I tried hard not to think negatively. Then, just in time, my grandma from the countryside called me, saying that she'd been picking a lot of sweet potatoes. She asked to give some of it to my future parents-in-law as well. She said she would send me a box. I hesitated and tried to send some sweet potatoes to my parents-in-law through my husband. However, he said, "My parents don't eat sweet potatoes. Both of them manage their intake of carbs." So is that right? Then, among our relatives, we have all kinds of doctors of medicine. You don't need to worry. I definitely felt then that something was not going well, but it was just a premonition. But when my husband did not say anything, I couldn't bring it up first. Then one day, my husband and I originally planned that we would watch a movie and go out to eat. But my husband said he was not feeling well, so we had to postpone our date. At that time, I hadn't really thought about it. My husband's voice didn't sound very good over the phone either. Does it hurt a lot? Did you receive any treatment? What should you do because the doctor can't even take care of himself? I know. I also took a flu test. I can't give it to you, so let's postpone our plans for later. I missed you a lot, so it's a pity. Oh, don't do that. Shall I come over now? If I wore a mask well, it should be okay. I can't relax then. I'll get better soon, so be patient. My parents are at home, so you don't have to worry about me. I was sorry for the canceled plans and thought about what to do alone or just go home when my colleague asked me. Stella, you said you had a date today, right? Oh, it got canceled. My boyfriend is sick. It might be the flu. Oh, really? Then would you like to go to a hotel buffet with me? I won an event this time and received a meal ticket for 2. The date expires after today. If you went on a date with your boyfriend. I was just going to give it to you. Come with me. Can I go there with you? I'm sorry. It's better to go with you. Dello? Today, let us girls eat delicious food, chat, and have fun together. She was a close friend like a younger sister. I really thought of her as my sister. We were close friends at the same hospital. On the recommendation of a female nurse, we went to a famous hotel in the city. Braving on the first floor of the hotel, my friend told me she would find out the location of the restaurant and come back. Well, she was away. I saw my husband sitting with a woman at a cafe far away. I could see her figure. Besides, when I saw my husband smiling at the other woman with that unique, kind smile of his, I couldn't see anything in my eyes like a female protagonist who was betrayed in a drama. You said you were sick, but did you lie to me to do something else behind my back? Honey, how are you here? Why did you think I would never come to a hotel? No, let me explain. Do not misunderstand. I'm sorry. I'll formally apologize to you for this at a later time. I am really sorry. My husband politely apologized to the other woman and took me out of the hotel. And he told a despairing story to me who was very angry. Actually, my parents are against our marriage. I guess it's because you don't have your parents, and being raised by your grandmother are the reasons. What? No, they didn't say anything like that at all back then. Actually, my parents are like that. They never say anything bad in front. However, after you left, even if they liked you, they felt that marriage is a family affair, and discomfort would come up with each other and would have to pay unnecessary attention. But of course, I'll never marry if I couldn't marry you. But my mother keeps setting up blind dates for me, and I've been putting it off for one reason or another. But she keeps saying that she'll arrange a marriage, so I was just trying to buy some time. I couldn't say anything after he said those words. Besides, my friend who came with me was watching all of this, so my mind went blank. Now that I knew all the facts, this problem couldn't be left only to my husband anymore. So, leaving my husband behind who was trying to stop me, the next day, after getting a difficult day off from the hospital, I went to the university where my mother-in-law worked. However, there for the first time, she didn't treat me as nicely as when she met me for the first time. She treated me with a cold atmosphere and cold eyes. She faced me and said, "I didn't see you as being so rude, but you are, aren't you?" Mother, I have something to tell you. I'm sorry. I have a class. Well, wait a minute though. I fully understand you. Of course, since you are a mother, you would want someone from a good home environment. I was raised by my grandmother, but I grew up decently. When I was at school from all of the teachers, I got a lot of compliments, and I have a strong sense of self-reliance. I became a doctor on my own, without tutoring at an academy. I may seem lacking a lot, but please give me one chance. I love your son like my life. I feel sorry for you, by the way. I'm a scholar and also a son's mother. So honestly, I can't really ignore the environment you grew up in. I don't want to hurt you, so I wish you would step aside. You might get insulted if I say this, but I want my son to marry someone who may be fragile but grew up receiving love and consideration in a greenhouse than someone who has a strong sense of independence. The time is up for my class. Take care. My mother-in-law left me like that. She said she had a lecture and she left the lab. Her words were polite, but I froze on the spot at the humiliation I felt for the first time. I had no choice but to give up this marriage. No matter what I say, nothing could change about the fact that I had no parents and was raised by my grandmother. If my grandma found out about this, she would be so heartbroken. So my heart ached, but I thought this marriage was over. So I immediately called my husband and asked him to break up, telling him what his mother said. Then my husband cried and said he was sorry for hurting me. But he said he would never part with me and he clung to me. Don't be like this. I could see perfectly when I met your mother today. I can't do this marriage. We can never be happy. No, why can't you be happy when I'm by your side? Then weren't you happy all this time? Because it's my family. I'll fix it. Please, don't be like this. I really can't live without you. I was heartbroken. Truth be told, my husband did nothing wrong. He met me whom his family opposed. See him crying in front of me, like this made me feel so bad. I said we should break up, but still I deeply love this man in my heart. So I decided to follow my husband's advice one more time. My husband said his parents made a hasty decision because they didn't know me well yet. If they kept seeing me, and once they get to know me better, he reassured me that they would definitely let me in as their daughter-in-law, but I didn't know. Maybe it was because of his mother's words and expressions were so cold, unlike my husband, so I wasn't confident. Did you meet your boyfriend's parents? Why are you not talking at all? What did they say at the house when you went over there? My grandmother was worried. I couldn't dare say his parents were against me because of the environment I grew up in, so I roughly lied to her. What can I say? They are happy that your granddaughter is a doctor, and for raising me, you must have suffered a lot. So my grandmother was happy, and she hung up the phone, relieved. I felt conflicted. Is a few days passed like that? My husband tried hard to pretend not to be getting tired of this whole thing in front of me, but he was, and by the time I thought it was time to end, a really unexpected thing happened. I became pregnant. I should be happy, but I was infinitely sad. I knew how my mother had me and how she lived. Also, the hardship my grandma had to raise me, because I knew better. However, my husband said everything would work out with my pregnancy. His own parents could no longer be against us, and he was very happy. But within a week, my mother-in-law burst into the hospital where I worked, looking very angry. She said, I really wanted to end it well, but you are very sly. Did you say you got pregnant? So what? Were you planning on marrying our son like this? We don't live in the Victorian age now, do we? So what if you're a doctor? You can't even take care of yourself. Does your grandma know that you did that? She raised her granddaughter very well. I couldn't stay still anymore in shame and humiliation. In addition, I was angry at my mother-in-law for talking about my grandmother. I said that I didn't get pregnant to get married and told her that I would raise the baby on my own. I yelled at her to get out of my office. Because of this commotion, I was called to the director's office, and I even heard that it would be better to take a break from the hospital for a while. Afraid of being treated like this when I got pregnant, I wasn't feeling good about it. But because of my mistake, when I heard about my grandma put in that light, I couldn't bear it any longer. I finally felt I couldn't go on with this marriage. My husband said, now that we have a child, he could never break up, and he was very firm about it again. That night, unexpectedly, he came to visit me with his father. Vince, darling, I am so sorry. I apologize for what my wife did so rudely. She shouldn't have done that to you, especially now that you're pregnant. Actually, I didn't have a completely different mind than my wife. Though I was against your marriage, but not anymore. It's not necessarily because you're pregnant. My son wants you so much. So much like this. I wondered why he would want you so. I want to take a step back as a father. Darling, it may be late, but please don't be angry. And won't you be my daughter-in-law? I felt like riding a roller coaster with my parents-in-law's reactions, which was the polar opposite overnight. It was confusing. I sent my husband and father-in-law back, saying I didn't want to think about anything now, and the next morning. I thought I was about to collapse, so I went to my grandmother's house out in the country. Oh, my baby. Why did you come without calling me? Grandma, I burst into tears again when I saw my grandmother. I sat down on the ground and told her about everything that happened. My grandmother listened to me for a while, then she held my hands. She held on tightly and said, the ground here is too cold. Let's go in. I'll make something delicious for you. People need to have a full stomach so that their heads can run well and their bodies can be healthy too. Come on, get up. So I took my grandmother by the hand and went into her house. And in front of a warm fireplace, smelling my grandmother, I fell asleep for a while. I opened my eyes for a second, and my grandma was stroking my face. Good poor baby, she said as she swallowed her tears. Because I knew this would happen, I was too sorry and I couldn't come. I turned my back to hide my tears, but my grandmother must have noticed that I was awake. Stella, your grandma asks for a hit even when I play poker. If you want to marry that boy, go ahead. I'll stand by you, right behind you. Don't be afraid. Do what you want to do. My grandma was so comforting to me. A few days later, at the suggestion of my father-in-law, I heard about the meeting of both sides of the family. At first, I refused, saying I didn't want to because I was already hurt. But my grandma next to me said she wanted to see my parents-in-law. Even if I wanted to cancel this marriage, I thought I could do it there, so I took my grandma to the meeting place. Don't you worry about anything, because I'll be by your side. Let me take a look at that woman's face. Saying that, my grandma held my hand even tighter. My husband and his parents already had arrived at the meeting place, and we sat down with a light exchange of greetings. It was them. Even now, when I think about it, something truly amazing happened right in front of my eyes. Otesi, it's you, Aunt Ray. This is Heather. Heather? How are you, Heather? Oh my God, I sent you away like that, and I didn't know whether you were alive or dead. So my heart was like that. How have you been? Yes, at that time. I was adopted from an orphanage and grew up well and lived well. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. However, then why are you here? For a moment, my grandma forgot about the purpose. We were at the meeting place, and she was talking very happily with my mother-in-law. And when my grandma saw my mother-in-law who opposed me and hurt me again, she had said that she will definitely give her a piece of her mind. But they said it was hard to believe that the person in question had a relationship with herself in the past. And my husband and my father-in-law, including me, who had not known anything until then, were soon able to hear about the amazing relationship between my grandma and my mother-in-law. It turned out, my mother-in-law was my mother's best friend a long time ago. She caught fire in her house at night, and the fire quickly spread to be the biggest in the village. Except for my mother-in-law, who's an elementary school student at that time, there was a heartbreaking accident when all of her other family members passed away. So in an instant, she lost all her family because of that fire, and she had nowhere to go. My grandmother said since she was her daughter's friend, she would raise my mother-in-law as her daughter. And she took her into her house and raised her with my mom for about 3 years like her own daughter. Her mom was not well off, so my mother-in-law, who did not want to be a burden, put herself into an orphanage on her own the year she turned 12. After I sent you away, I cried for days, even if I would starve. I let that little girl go there on her 2 feet. No, who could raise a stranger like her own child like you had done? At that time, I went to the orphanage with a very grateful heart. However, I didn't know Stella was Helen's daughter, and I treated her like that. I'm so sorry. I was honestly in the same situation as you, and I couldn't accept you because I thought I was looking at myself. I know all too well what it means to have no parents. So I knew it was selfish, but I wanted my son to marry a girl with both parents. I thought it would be nice. I'm sorry. I'll pay back to you for the rest of my life. Fix your mom. Helen reached out her hand to me, but I only pushed you away, so I was bad. I'm also sorry. I need to apologize to you too, aren't I? Let bygones be bygones. If there was a misunderstanding, we can solve it like this. I know you never did it with a bad heart. My granddaughter. I'm counting on you to take care for her. I really put a lot of effort into raising her. Yes, I'll do my best. Della, I am so sorry and thank you. Thanks to you, I can see my aunt again. These words are true, but I am embarrassed even though I'm saying it. Let's get along well in the future. I'll even do your mother's chair. My mother-in-law said that and hugged me. She repeatedly saying how sorry she was. So the hurt that I never thought would go away began to loosen bit by bit. There were many twists and turns, but we were able to get married receiving all the blessings from everyone. And I gave birth to a pretty daughter. Not only my mother-in-law, but also my grandmother said that I gave birth to an angel. They competed trying to hug our baby. They made such a big fuss, and I became so happy watching them that I wondered if I went through all those problems just to have this kind of happiness like now. My daughter's growing up, and now she's 3 years old. She does a lot of babbling and is very charming. She is receiving a lot of love from not only us, but also her great-grandmother and her grandparents. A few months ago, it was so amazing when my grandma, who used to hate city life, came to live in our house after she gave up her country life herself and chose to live in the city despite its bad air and noise. She did that because of our daughter. I couldn't stand my great-granddaughter floating in my eyes. I'll stay here until my great-granddaughter enters elementary school. Are you fine with that? When I asked you, Tom, you said you didn't like it. Is this a love I only heard about in those words? I'm so sad and jealous. I can't hear what you're saying. Our puppy, do you want to sleep with your great-grandma? Grandma will sing you the lullaby. Like this, when I become successful, I would try to serve my grandmother with my filial duties, but filial piety may be done by my daughter. Should I like that or be sad? Every day, when I see my grandma with a smile on her face, I am very happy. I hope my grandmother will live a long, healthy life as my daughter is growing up. These days, I am very happy. It was a story that I wrote because I wanted to tell her how happy I am. But unintentionally, it turned out to be a long story. Thank you for listening to my long story. I hope you stay healthy and happy today. Please cheer for me and write your comments of wisdom in the comment section. Pressing like and subscription is a big help to me. Have a wonderful day.